All right, we got Claudia on the line with us,
All
Jeffrey. I want to carry that on. I think that's important discussion. We need to do that after Claudia and her friends are not with us any longer. Claudia, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I've got you. Thanks, Dave.
And who do you have on the line with us today, Claudia?
Well, many will recall last week we had Terry Rivera, my friend and responder, with us, and he's on with us again today.
Hey,
Terry, are you there?
Yes,
Want to make sure we've got you. Great. And then we have another responder. As you know, we were all responders, but another responder that's on with us today is Jimmy Brown. And Jimmy also served with 10 House, and he and Terry both, of course, served on 10 House. We talked a lot about that fire department house and location last week. And so I want to make sure, do we have Jimmy on the line?
I'm here.
Perfect. Before we actually get started with some questions, because Jimmy's got an amazing story also about his service that day on 9/11, I just wanted to take a minute. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, and last week I spoke about Diane DiGiacomo, 52 years old, who had cancer that had spread to her bone and her brain. She weighed 60 pounds and spoke out for all of us from her sick bed. And we talked about her last Monday, and I want to take a moment out of Thanksgiving for people like Diane, because right now her family and friends are gathered at the funeral parlor. She passed away on Friday, and her services will be held tomorrow in New York. And so if we could just take a moment of silence before we go into the interview, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Jimmy, I thought maybe you could start out and give us a little bit of history on yourself. I know you served in the military, and you were there also the day of the attacks. You were a probationary firefighter, isn't that right?
Yeah, I had just left NYPD after 9 years there, and went to the fire department. I just made it under the wire as far as the age requirement. And my training, we had a training rotation, so 10 House was actually a temporary stop for me. It was a 14-week rotation, and we were probably about 9-10 weeks into it. And I had switched over from the truck, and I was working the engine on 9/11. And I did a 24, which I worked the night before, and I was working that morning, and we had just gotten back from a transformer fire run, and we were waiting for roll call because the change of shift is at 9 o'clock. So there was a lot of people coming, a lot of people going. I was still sticking around for the day shift, and all of a sudden, everything, all the nice peacefulness was just broken up by the sound of a plane coming fast and low. And before you even had time to process it, it smacked into the North Tower.
And you were down at 10 House when that happened?
Yeah, I was sitting on house watch because I was the probie. I was the one that was tasked with checking all the equipment on the rig. And I figured before I went in and got a cup of coffee, I would just wait until roll call. So I was sitting on house watch, and I was actually just going to open up the paper. And I heard the plane, it hit, and you felt the concussion wave go right through you. And the funny thing is, there were a few guys standing out on the apron, and I remember them saying, when I heard the plane, they're like, "Holy crap, it's going to hit the towers." And I thought, me being a probie, they were just busting my chops, seeing if they get a rise out of me. And I couldn't see it with the angle that I had, so I was about to get up out of the chair, and as soon as I stood up was when the plane hit. And you just went into that old crap mode. You just reverted back to training, and I ran outside to the apron, looked up, saw the fireball, asked them what kind of plane it was, and I got 3 different answers. Ran back in, tried to sound the alarm, house watch, contact dispatch, and do 1,000 different things in one shot. And we just hopped in our gear. Civilians were pouring into the firehouse because we had the doors open, trying to get away from all the falling debris, and the truck rolled out, and the engine rolled out. And I remember we initially, for whatever reason, the engine chauffeur had stopped at the South Tower, and we offloaded there. Because I think somebody thought, or somebody said that it was the South Tower that got hit, and we started to run into the Tall Ships restaurant. And then somebody said, no, it's the North Tower, and the engine had already pulled away, so we had to literally run around the corner. And I remember it was so odd because even though it was that early, everybody, all the cars, all the traffic had left. The streets were like, there was nobody on the streets. And I remember seeing Terry. as we approached the entrance to the North Tower. I remember running past him, and I think he had his back to me, and he was kneeled over with a water can watering down a burn victim. And for a split second, all I saw was the pinkish of the burns, and I remember thinking, oh, good, it's a training dummy from the academy, so this is just a drill. And as I took the next step, I'm like, you idiot, you saw the fireball, it's not a drill, keep going. And then we went into the lobby of the North Tower, and we waited for everybody else to get there. And it seemed like it was an eternity.
And then you went inside, right?
Yeah, we went inside. I remember in the lobby, I couldn't really figure out what had happened because the explosion was so far up, but we had that body that Terry was working on, and we had another victim right inside the foyer who was burned, also extensively head to toe. And I remember having to physically step over that person in order to get inside the lobby, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, knowing that this person's alive and there's nothing I could do to help them, because I didn't have any medical equipment. We weren't there as a CFR engine. We were there to put the fire out, so I had my hose roll-ups. And inside the lobby, I remember looking at the walls, and the marble on the walls was like an inch thick or better. And I remember seeing it cracked, and half of it was off. Some of the windows were out. The elevator doors on some shafts were kind of haphazard and cockeyed. And I just couldn't figure out what happened. Later on, I realized that the fuel came down certain elevator shafts and blew out the lobby, and that's how these people got burned. But initially, as I'm walking in, I thought, how did they survive the fall from the plane? Because that's where I thought they came from. Like I said, later on, you had time to reflect upon it and figure it out. But in the moment, you really could only concentrate what was right in front of you. And even at that, it was happening so fast, you missed half of it. I had conversations with guys from Proby School in the lobby of the North Tower while we were waiting to get our orders, and I don't remember ever talking to them. That's how fast everything was changing. But eventually we got partnered up with another engine company, and we started climbing upstairs, and the stairwell was a regular-sized stairwell, so it was literally one row of first responders going up, one row of civilians coming down. And on the way up, it was chaos in the lobby, but as soon as you got in the stairwell, it was so quiet and so serene. It was amazing. There was no panic from the civilians, and I'm not sure if it was by virtue of having gone through this in '93, but they were coming down calmly. They were waiting their turn. Every once in a while, you see a break, and you would think that's the last of the civilians, and then you see more, and you'd realize why, because somebody who was badly injured or burned or whatever, they were being helped down by other civilians, by their coworkers. And what was amazing was that the people behind them, the able-bodied people, weren't trying to jump in front of them. They were waiting patiently. Testament to civility and compassion. And the other thing that really struck me in that stairwell was the civilians were taking the waters out of the vending machines, and they were handing them to us, saying that we needed them. We needed the water, and we would take a few steps up, and we would hand it to a civilian, because that's who we are. That's what we do. We're supposed to be taking care of people, not the other way around. And so those waters just kept going back and forth. I don't think anybody ever drank them. And we got up to probably about the mid-20s, and we were taking a rest. We had made contact with Greg Atlas, who was our lieutenant, because he hopped in the stairwell before we could get in, because it was literally one person in, one person out. And we made contact. We were delayed because the other engine company had a guy who kept having chest pains. And finally, his lieutenant said, we're going to wait for the medics. And about the same time, we made contact with Greg Atlas, and we said, all right, we're going to go up and meet him. And I found out later on that guy with the chest pains actually had a pulled chest muscle. He had survived, and I read a news story in the days and weeks afterwards that he had a chest muscle pull, and that's what it was. So his little pulled chest muscle probably saved our lives, because as soon as we started up, we felt this unbelievable rumble, and the lights kicked off, dust kicked up, and we thought it was smoke. So we masked up. We had no idea about the second plane at this point, and this was the South Tower coming down now. So we were totally oblivious to everything, because any radio transmissions we were getting were spotty and choppy at best. And thankfully, all of us in the engine were on the same page. We said, we got to self-evacuate. We dropped everything that wasn't attached to us, figured we'll pick it up if we come back up. and we started downstairs. We passed other engine companies that kind of questioned us, say, where you going? We didn't get an evacuation order. It was like we didn't know what the heck was going on, but we knew it was bad because it literally felt like another plane hit our tower. And on the way down, like I said, we passed people who were either continuing up or standing fast, and all of those people are gone now. And it's unfortunate because...
I'm sorry, there was a real problem with radio communications, wasn't there? Like, where did you finally...
Absolutely.
You did eventually listen to an evac order.
I never got an evacuation order. Right. We self-evacuated. The cops all got the evacuation orders. And most of the cops were saying on the way down, they said to evacuate. And, you know, you get the bravado going on, the battle of the badges, that has a little bit to play sometimes. Some guys are like, well, we didn't get an evacuation order, so we're going to keep going up. And, you know, truly, honestly, you kind of felt like a coward when you were passing other companies that were either standing fast or going up because you're going down. But on the way down, I got separated from my company, and I got hung up behind two Port Authority cops that came off a landing and were helping a civilian down. So there was really nowhere for me to go because it was 3 across. So I couldn't get past them to catch up. I couldn't jump over them. I wanted to. Every last ounce of me wanted to push them out of the way and get the hell out of the building. But I waited. We got down. They said that the ground level was blocked, so we couldn't get out that way. So we had to get off on the plaza level. And the whole time, I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know what happened to these guys. I don't know if they pulled off and waiting for me or if they got out. I ended up getting out on the north side of the North Tower, in between the North Tower and 6th World Trade Center, which was a customs house. When the Secret Service had their, or CIA, the feds had their munitions stored. And I remember a boss from some agency said, hey, we got a few civilians straggling out. Form a line around 6th World Trade and direct them out onto Vesey Street. So we ran. Thankfully, 6th World Trade Center had an overhang. So you literally open up the door to the North Tower, looked up, made sure you wasn't going to get hit by a body, and made a mad dash for the overhang of 6th World Trade Center. And that's where I perched myself. After a few people came past me, I said, you know what, it's time to get out of here. Because you would hear things whistling coming down, and thankfully I couldn't see because of my angle. But there were bodies and debris coming down. You'd hear it whistle and then explode in all that dust. And I remember thinking, this is like a movie set. You know, it's like special effects. And things were getting so hairy. And I said, you know what, I don't care. Boss or no boss, I'm out of here. I took a couple steps, and that's when the North Tower started coming down. And literally, the only thing I had time to do was get up in a ball up against 6th World Trade Center. And it just sounded like a freight train coming from really far away and just getting closer and faster as it came down. And at the same time, all the wind that was being pushed out just started blowing, and I had no idea where this wind was coming from at the time. But I knew, you know, whatever was happening was bad. And I got up into the ball, and all the debris started cascading toward me and started burying me. I felt it in my ankles, my knees, my shoulders. And then I realized, all right, this is the day I'm going to die, and I'm going to get buried alive. Am I going to start thinking about things like, am I going to suffocate? Am I going to dehydrate? Am I going to starve? Is it going to be quick? Is it going to be long? And I started thinking about my wife. I was going to leave her a widow. She never wanted me to go to the fire department in the first place. And I thought about how they were going to find me when they dug me out. And the thought of my brothers digging me out, curled up in the fetal position, bothered me so much that I said, let me try and stand up. And I figured at least if I stood up, I'd get cut in half by a beam or crushed by something, and at least it'd be a quicker death. And I noticed the window of 6th World Trade Center was busted out, so I said, hey, better there than here, so let me just dive in, which, as I'm diving, I didn't even think to check if there was a floor there, so I said, I could be falling like 6 or 7 stories down into sub-basements. But thankfully, I got hung up on some beams just below the windowsill level, and shortly thereafter, it stopped coming down. So because it was so fast, I thought it was only a partial collapse. I had no idea the whole building had just come down on top of me.
And then how did you get out from there?
Had to wait for the dust to settle because it was literally, I was literally at the epicenter of that massive cloud. And it was as though somebody flipped a master switch to every sense that I had. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. I had my light that was on my bumper coat. I turned it on, trying to see something, and I couldn't even see the light, so I thought it was broken. And I found out later on it was still working, but I just couldn't see it because the dust was that thick. I had a mouthful of dust because I ended up on my back and stuff was kicking over top of me. I tried to spit it out, and I couldn't do that, so I had to literally take my glove off and scrape it out. I couldn't breathe. I had to do shallow breaths because even taking a hit of air, it just forced it deeper into my lungs. So literally had to wait for the dust to settle before you could orient yourself and figure out, all right, there's a way out of here. And it basically went through 6 World Trade Center. Because by then it was just a total mess. And out onto Vesey Street, and I got off the staircase heading east, and I kept walking east. I saw cop cars burning, fire trucks crushed. I'm like, what the hell just happened here? I had no idea. I thought the buildings were still standing behind me. I thought I just couldn't see them because of the smoke and the dust. So I kept walking, thinking that they were going to topple over like dominoes. And I remember trying to calculate in my mind how many blocks would 110 stories cover. And I just kept walking until I hit Broadway. And when I hit Broadway, that was the new command post for the fire department. And I remember as I'm walking, covered in dust, my helmet's gone because it came off when I jumped in. People, they weren't even paying attention to me. I saw everybody running around all frenzied and crazy. And I had no idea that everybody was wiped out. The other building came down. So when they didn't pay me any mind, I really thought, I was like, maybe I'm dead. Maybe this is what happens when you die. And I'm just kind of like wandering around now. And I made it all the way into a building, the lobby of a building. I just kind of wandered in there to get away from the dust. And some police chief handed me a bottle of water. And I said, thank goodness I'm still alive. And then there I kind of just caught my bearings, got filled in a little bit on what all else had transpired that I didn't know about. And then I just kind of went out looking for my company because now I'm thinking maybe these guys didn't get out. Maybe they pulled off on the floor waiting for me. So now, because they're waiting for me, maybe they're all dead because of that. So the guilt immediately started to set in. And then I finally saw a lieutenant that was on a recall from my house, and he asked me who I was working with, where I saw them last, and I rattled off everybody in the engine, and I couldn't remember a single person that was on the truck. I just drew a total blank when he asked me. I couldn't even remember Terry, and I walked right by him. And he told me, he says, all right, go inside the Woolworth building, get triaged. And that's where I ended up for a little while, and eventually later in the afternoon, somebody thought that I had a concussion because I was in shock, and I didn't have my helmet, so they thought that I got hit in the head. So they threw me in the back of an ambulance, and next thing I knew, I was up at Cornell.
And then you went back, though, to help out, did you?
Not that day. My wife.
Not that day.
Yeah, they stripped me down and threw all my stuff in bags, and my wife came and retrieved me from the hospital later that night, actually, and made it back home, sat in front of the TV, and got the skinny on everything that happened. And I was convinced the 10 house was gone. The next morning, I called up fire headquarters, and I asked them, where do I report? And they told me, go to your firehouse. I said, well, my firehouse is gone. Because I saw the television coverage, and I'm looking at it, like, there's no way it survived, because it's right there. And I didn't have anybody's cell number, because cells weren't, as big as they are now, number one. Number two, you couldn't call the firehouse because all the phone lines were down. I didn't have my captain's number. I didn't have anybody else's number because it was kind of a temporary stop, and I was fairly new there. So I was really at a loss as to where to go and what to do. And every time I called it, they said, just go to your firehouse. Well, I didn't even have my ID because we had gotten woken up for the transformer fire early morning out of our racks. So I left it in my locker. I said, I can't even get in the location, into the area. But I ended up back there like 2 or 3 days later.
Well, that's quite an experience. Terry, maybe you can give a little light so we can get you in on this too. You were a probationary firefighter, and Jimmy was also a probationary fire, but you had graduated, Terry, and I believe that Jimmy hadn't made it even to graduation yet, and I'll talk about that further. I just want to, if you could kind of give a little understanding of what the Proby School is and how you're working, even though you're not graduated yet.
Yeah, so they changed it about, I don't know how many different times. They always try to, make an improvement to Proby School. So me and Jimmy were in the same program. I just started a little before I started in January. And so we did, I forget how many. So I think it was January, maybe 8 weeks or 10 weeks we did at Proby School. And then we went out to the field for 14 weeks. So I did my 14 weeks already in Brooklyn. I worked at Ladder 149, Castle on the Hill. That was my 14-week probation. Then I went back to the academy for 3 weeks of peace officer training and hazmat, and then I graduated in July of 2001, and then got assigned to Ladder 10. So Jimmy was on his 14-week deal and about to go back to the academy for another few weeks and then graduate. And because they wanted to try and filter out, they had a lot of issues with guys going through the academy and then going to the firehouse and go to a fire and then say, okay, this job isn't for me. So they wanted to try and get the probies actually to some fire duty to make sure this is actually the job that they want to do before graduating.
And then Jimmy, you were. I'm sorry. Jimmy, you were NYPD before you even joined the department. Is that right?
Yeah, I did 9 years as a cop in New York, in Brooklyn.
And then decided to go over to the firefighter side. And then so this Proby class that you were in, I know that we lost some of the guys that you were going through class with that never even made it to their graduation.
Yeah, we had 99. One guy dropped out because of personal reasons. And then out of the remaining 98, we lost 6 that were also working Lower Manhattan, and one of them I think was working in Brooklyn, Red Hook, Brooklyn. So we had 6 empty seats at our graduation.
We'll be sure to remember them always also, as we do with all of our brothers and sisters. One of the stories I'd really appreciate if you would share with the listeners here is what you shared with me about Chip, about his experience and his sharing his experience with you and what that meant for you.
There were a lot of guys that I knew or worked with, and I literally stopped counting at 30. And I never in my life thought, I limited myself only going to funerals of guys that I knew or worked with. And I never thought that I would know this many people that died. But Chip and I worked together. His name's John Chiporo. We called him Chip. We worked together in the 7-2 precinct in Brooklyn. He was a little bit older than me. He got on before me. But there were a lot of parallels in our lives. We were both Marines. We were both cops. And we both ultimately became firemen. And Chip was an awesome guy. Always had a smile on his face. Always had a good word to say about anybody. Always willing to help people out. But I remember when I was in high school, I remember the bombing of the barracks in Beirut. I remember seeing the social studies class. They had the front page up on the wall, and he was there. He was, I believe, a radio operator, and I remember him telling the story that he had just missed being in the barracks when it got bombed because he had to be out on post. And he never really spoke to me about it, but he would come back to the precinct often, and he would just check in on me, make sure that I'm processing to go to the fire department. This was after he was gone over to the fire department. And one day he came in just before I was ready to go into Proby School. He came into my office and he just sat down. He just started talking about Beirut out of the blue. I didn't ask. I didn't want to pry, but he just started telling me about the aftermath of picking up his buddy's body parts and kind of describing the scene. And I always thought it was odd. I said, why is he coming in here telling me this? And I realized after 9/11 that he was literally preparing me for what I was going to experience myself. Because the parallels were, they continued even then. Unfortunately, Chip, he was assigned to a downtown Brooklyn company, and he got dispatched to the South Tower. And those guys in the South Tower didn't have a chance because they didn't know that the building was going to come down on top of them. And they had no chance to get out, and Chip died in the South Tower. And I remember having a hard time with his particular death after 9/11 because I wasn't a believer in God, and it just pushed me further away. And I always thought, if there's a God, how can he take a guy like Chip and leave me here? he's certainly a better person than I ever could be. So it was a path to travel. Definitely was.
And since then, you've come to a faith.
Yes, I did. God worked on me for a while. I was very resistant up until about the month before the 10th anniversary. And God really played it hard and fast, putting a lot of people and a lot of circumstances in my path. And I actually finally got over my pride, and I got baptized on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Probably almost to the minute, 10 years later, that I thought I was dead.
Well, I'm sure all those people like Terry and Chip and Greg Atlas and so many more, including all your classmates who perished that day, certainly were keeping watch over you. And you knocked on the door, and the door opened.
Still trying to figure out why he left me here.
Well, we're here, as I've always said, we're here to be a witness for those that aren't. And you're being a beautiful witness. Terry's been a beautiful witness, and that's the most that we can hope for in this world. That survivor's guilt can eat a person up from the inside out. And it took you some time, but instead of letting it eat you up, you came to a determination and a faith that has made you strong, and now you're able to help others. And isn't that really what it's all about, is loving and helping other people? Now, there's something else, because I know we're running a little low on time here, but I want to make sure that you also share this organization that you're associated with now, the Wounded Officers Initiative. Maybe you can share with the folks what that's all about and what they do.
I got involved with this with one of my coworkers here. I work at the Orange County Sheriff's Office now in Florida, where we're relocated to, and he identified a need for officers that are hurt and forced off the job. And coming from New York, I had a little bit of ignorance as far as that, because we had certain pension benefits, which New York doesn't even have right now. They even got whittled away. And we're trying to level that playing field.
And so what kind of things do you do to WOI?
One of the things that we're going to do is, like I said, create that level playing field by having a minimum set of benefits, disability benefits that would be available to police officers nationwide. One of the other things that we are looking to do is create a counseling program, which will benefit all cops nationwide, whether active, retired, wounded. And I think that is the most important thing, and that's what I really signed on for. Because the reality is, especially on the law enforcement side, all first responders end up getting mental scars and mental wounds. But on the law enforcement side, it's even more prevalent. And having been on both sides, I could see the difference, because you're pretty much being attacked all the time, whether it's from the press, whether it's from the person you deal with. Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's coworkers, but it seems like you're always being attacked in some form or fashion. And if you don't take care of those wounds to turn them into scars, they just sit there and fester. And a lot of guys end up getting to that finish line of retiring after 20, 25, 30 years, and they think that they've made it. And then when they have time to sit and actually reflect upon all those festering wounds, it has a really, really detrimental effect at times. So we're looking to address that and a few other things.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we're just looking to, those are the two main things that we're looking to address, but we're also looking to bring recognition to these guys, tell their stories. We have a website up, woundedofficersinitiative.org. You can check out the stories on there, kind of like the Officer Down Memorial page, similar to that.
Really excellent work. They're, like I said just a few minutes ago, we're witness for everybody who isn't, and reaching out the way that you are is a beautiful and wonderful thing. And I also know that you helped bring some steel down to Winter Garden, Florida. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, the town I live in, Winter Garden, just outside Orlando, the fire chief here had gotten his hands, he had requested some steel, and he thought it was going to be a small piece of steel. And the Port Authority had gotten back to him the week before the 10th anniversary and told him that he has a 4-foot section of I-beam, but he needs to come pick it up this week. So myself and 3 other first responders from the area went up there, picked it up. We slept at the firehouse I retired from, Engine 201 in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. And we picked up steel the next day. And then we stopped at 10 House. The guys were able to get a look-see around there. And then we headed back. And it was a really awesome trip.
Very, very cool. And Terry, I'm sorry. Terry, you've also been to memorials, too. You were part of that 9/11 flag, the Stitch Project.
Yeah, that was a surprise. I had a friend from 10 House, a couple of guys from 10 House, Mark Medina, firefighter, and Jimmy Sands, and they said they were going to do an event at the Battleship Missouri if I was interested in helping out. I said, sure. And then unbeknownst to me, they nominated me, and they read a little spiel that was embarrassing, but it was very therapeutic. It was just those initial years when I left New York City, I had no desire to be around New York City or around fire trucks or anything. When I was forced to retire, I went to kind of it's a change of scenery and a change of pace, but ironically came back full circle, and I got my degree in emergency management. And so it seems like you can't really escape your fate. You just have to deal with it. And that was one of the biggest things for me mentally, was learning to, because that Terry Rivera on 9/11 before the plane hit was gone, and it was a new person. And instead of trying fighting the new person and the way he thinks and acts, just accept who he is by the experiences he's been through, helped me greatly, and also helped me pass that on to a lot of veterans that I speak to, and and PTSD or whatever you want to call it, PTSD. It is it's your body's natural reaction to something that's traumatic, and I think the harder we try and fight it, that's when issues tend to happen, instead of just okay, this is it, this is what I got to deal with, and let's move on.
Well said. Yeah, you both have been incredible blessings and witness for so many of the guys that aren't here with us today, and those that have died since. That said, I do have some updates to give since our show last week, but I wanted to open it up first to Dave or Jeffrey in case they had some questions for either Jimmy or Terry. Dave?
Well, I'm just, my mind's just thinking, I can't believe what these guys have gone through when the event was actually taking place. And, the decisions that they had to make split second, to save others and save their own lives, from some crazy people flying airplanes into buildings. You just would never have thought that. And then here they are dealing with the reality of that and seeing the wrath of destruction and the emotions that people are going through split second wise. I imagine, I don't know how they do it. I imagine that you're thinking about it night and day. It's something that never leaves you. Do you ever get peace, guys? Do you ever get to where you can sincerely relax and get it off your mind, or is it just constantly playing in the background of your mind?
I found peace. I found peace a long time ago. Thankfully, God had set me up prior to 9/11 with peer support training when I was a police officer. So that kind of gave me the tools to help me process through the post-traumatic stress a lot sooner than I would have otherwise. But it's part of me, like Terry described it. It's a new Terry. I've always described it as it's always going to be a piece of me, but I had to figure out how to make that piece, how to make that experience fit into me, rather than it ruling me. I want to rule it.
Well, that's a blessing that you. It's a blessing that you had God part of your life, to where that you could manage yourself that way, and your faith was hugely important. But for Terry, it sounded like it took a period of what was it, 10 years? Is that what I heard, Terry?
Yeah, so, because I always had put it into the back burner when I was still working in the fire department, but then when I was forced to retire in 2007, it hit me like a wave now, because the best, one of the best support units you could have is your coworkers, and after 9/11, the best thing was being back in the firehouse being back in the kitchen, you know, busting each other's chops, and because everyone went through the experience, so we're all there, and kind of like you see, just like in any other, like, you know, watching Band of Brothers, or, you know, being able to share that experience, to be around each other. But once I was forced to retire, once you're out, pretty much. That's how, you know, it is. And I mean, you're always a firefighter, and if I showed up there, they would be but it's different. It's not the same thing. And so, yeah, I pretty much left New York City, and it was too overwhelming for me to be in New York City. And I picked a pretty good spot, though. I went to Hawaii, which was very healing in itself. And but I won't say that I've totally come to peace with it, but I've learned to live with it. And some days, you know, depending when, you know, some days it hits me out of nowhere that I just have to, okay, I'm going to go take a walk out in the middle of the desert here in Nevada. I'm going to go out to Red Rock and just leave everybody alone and just let me be at peace. And but for most of the time, I'm pretty much functional. And but it's still, you know, it's a heavy load to bear.
It's got to be, and I'm just trying to imagine. What was the lady's name that just passed away on Friday, Claudia? What was her first name again?
That's Diane DiGiacomo.
And then she basically just phased out to be a very small person before she passed away. And
60 pounds.
60 pounds. And, you know, how does I mean, that's ongoing. I mean, here, since we've had you on the air with us now, there's been a number of people that passed away, which, in your words, Claudia, you know, it's another murder when these folks pass away, because they would still be here if it weren't for 9/11. And, you know, that's the part that people, I don't feel, really understand. We got to communicate it time and time and time again, that, you know, the event took place on 9/11, you know, but there's many people that were there, that responded to the event, that had to, you know, or wanted to support and help the site. And now many people are dying because of that, because they're subject their bodies to contaminated materials. Go ahead, Claudia.
And one of the updates I was going to give is, we were on your show last Monday. I know you aired that again, I think today in the morning hours, but we actually did the interview on the 16th. Since that date, we've lost 5 responders, and we believe 4 of those have passed from 9/11 related illnesses. One of those, of course, is Diane, who we've talked about, and another that I'll just bring to mention is Michael Ahern. Now, the name might not ring a bell for you, but Michael Ahern was what his friends called was an electrical genius. After the attacks, he was down there at the site getting the lights up. I mean, Terry and Jimmy can attest to how important it was to have those lights back up and running, because all electrical power was lost down in the area. And in order to facilitate rescue and recovery operations, you know, light was certainly of utmost importance. So Michael didn't only just work on that. He's also the man most responsible for the production, which people have seen photographs of, the Tower of Lights, or the Tribute in Light, which are those 2 beams that sit in the footprints of the old towers, those beautiful blue lights that shined up to the heavens, you know, in remembrance for so many years. And I'm sure everybody is familiar with those. So we just lost Michael also, and we've lost others. And that's just in this last week.
Wow. That's quite a story. Quite a story.
So we have some really incredible people on the brighter side of things, because it's always nice to have some good news once in a while, since last week. And I know that Jimmy, being a Floridian now, will especially appreciate this one. Marco Rubio has signed on officially as a co-sponsor of our Senate 928 Zadroga bill, which is huge news. And we're so thankful to everyone in the community that has been calling and writing and going on radio shows like yours. Certainly this show is making a difference too. And all of our members and all the people and all the other advocates that are out there working so hard to get this Zadroga bill into law, and we still need to get it out onto the floor for a vote. But to have Marco Rubio, a presidential candidate, come out forthright, sign on as co-sponsor, and say that he supports us is huge. We'd like to see more of them do that, the presidential candidates, even if they're a non-voting member. You know, we have folks that are running for office that are non-voting members on these bills, but for them to speak out for us is huge. We've had 6 more sign on the House side of the bill, which is H.R. 1786, and that included 5 Republicans, and one of those is from the great state of Missouri, which I know you fellas will be happy with, and that's Sam Graves has signed on. And the last item that I had as far as the update goes is Paul Ryan, who we really need on board to get our bill moved out to the floor, has publicly stated that he is supporting us. So that's huge too. But we need to stay on it. We can't lighten up now. Paul Ryan says that we need to pass this by the end of the year. We need to do something by the end of the year. Yes, we do. And the sooner the better. Wouldn't it be a wonderful Thanksgiving gift if these fellows could just, we have the votes. We have 66 now officially signed on the Senate bill. It's Bill of Rights approved. We have, well over 250 on the House bill side. So we have the votes. We just need to get Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan to move our bills out to the floor for a vote. And so if people can keep up the pressure, keep calling these offices, keep letting them know that 9/11 didn't stop on 9/11. They're murdering people now. And to please, just, we can get the financing together. There's some different discussions out there about how this is going to be funded. The Republicans certainly like it. Some do, some don't. Some Democrats like it. Some do, some don't. We can figure out the funding. What's the most important thing? It's taking care of our veterans, and we're veterans.
Yes.
And we're sick, and we're dying, and that's increasing, and they need to do the right thing. Move it for a vote.
Yep. I mean, Jeff, is there any reason, why in the world won't they put it out there? Do you have a feel for that? Just a lack of awareness? I'm sure they have a plate full of stuff every day when they go in there, but good grief. Good grief.
No, I don't have any explanation for it. What Claudia's talking about, it looks like they've got the votes in both houses of Congress. And
it's just that simple to call it up for a vote, boom, it's done, and I tell you.
And the Congressional Budget Office's report is out there. So if they were waiting on that, that's no longer an excuse. It's done. It meets the amounts of money that we had talked about, which is really a pittance amount. And when you look at the overall, it's a pittance amount. People spend as much on Halloween candy in one day per year. And we're going to spend, I don't know how many more billions of dollars on Christmas this year. We're not asking for a gift here. We earned this.
Well,
we're sick and we're dying because we did the right thing.
Yeah, and we've talked before on all the wasteful spending that takes place. And plus, when people put themselves at risk, other things don't get done. You take care of the ones that put themselves at risk. That's for the benefit of many. And you just don't take advantage of them, period. There's something else that doesn't get done. It should be the top of the list. Those that serve our country, and that's what these folks have done. They served their country. And why politics is involved in that, I will never understand.
Never. George Patton, this is my quote of the week. I like to throw out a little quote of the week, and this week's quote is from George Patton, who said, "It's foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." Well, you know what? These politicians need to thank God. And they need to thank us and do the right thing. It's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I like that quote.
Maybe they should be thinking about that.
Thank you, you guys. My gosh. I'm just blown away by, the deep desire and the compassionate humanity of individuals. It's just amazing. Just fascinating. And that's America. That's America that we need to let folks know about, and all these other little things that are out there that or they're trying to cause a stir. That's just very upsetting. But they get a lot of mileage, and we gotta choke those situations and get the folks' minds on these important subjects such as yours. So.
Well, and that it was a nationwide event. Here you've got Terry right now, who's in Nevada. You've got Jimmy, who's down in Florida. And you've got me, who's out in the Pacific Northwest. So this was a nationwide event, whether we responded from our home areas from other states or we responded when we were right there. This is a nationwide. 9/11 wasn't a Northeast event. This affected our whole country. It changed the world, and it's changing our lives.
Yeah, you were living somewhere other than New York City, and you went there. You were living in the Northwest, and you were called upon. And then, but Jimmy and the other gentleman helped me with his, Jimmy and Terry. They were right there. I mean, they were in House 10, which House 10, ladies and gentlemen, is the fire station that was like within a block of the towers. Is that right, guys?
Right across the street.
Yeah. Right across the street. So, my gosh. I mean, did this done before the towers were knocked down, guys? How many times in a year would you have calls into the towers? I mean, was it just rare, or did it happen frequently? Kind of give our listening audience a bit of a feel on that.
Well, the World Trade Center complex was basically our first due response area. 10 House was pretty much put at that location for the towers themselves.
Okay.
So that was, once the towers were gone, our first due response area, for all intents and purposes, was, it just vanished.
And I don't know if you guys saw it over the weekend, but there was a fire in the John Hancock Tower in Chicago. And I don't know what happened there, but there was smoke coming out of that building. I don't know what caused it, but did you happen to see that?
I did not.
I saw an image briefly. I didn't see the details. I just saw it was on the internet there. I saw it flashed.
Yeah, that's all. I'm interested in seeing what the reality is behind that. You need to, every given situation, got to investigate it and see it all the way to the end. But so it was common for you to have to go into the towers. And am I reading that correctly? That there would be something going on, and that's you respond to it. Now you guys are both pretty new to the job at that point, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was the we would respond. I would say, I mean, there was a lot of false alarms in there, thankfully, and because the Trade Center was, a modern building, so it has a lot of detection things. So any type of little smoke, even in a weird, but we would still have to respond regardless. So we responded, any type of medical emergencies there, and not so many fires, but mostly medical emergencies, and sometimes utility, maybe like a transformer fire or something like that, or a smaller. But we knew those. I'd only been there for a few months, but I had been there plenty of times. And even before I was on the fire department, I was working for the New York Blood Center, and I used to do, I was a phlebotomist, a.k.a. vampire, so I did a lot of blood drives in the World Trade Center, so I knew those buildings pretty well. And,
it's like a little city within the city.
Yeah. I think fully occupied, my numbers could be off, but that's why they deem it such a, not only it was a bad day, but it was also the greatest rescue, because fully occupied that area with the mall and both towers and the other buildings is close to 50,000 people. I mean, we lost 3,000, but it could have been a lot worse.
Wow. My hometown had 1,189.
So, it kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Sure does.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
A lot of work got done in those two towers, that complex every day. A lot of work got done.
Yeah. I can remember going there.
And I've heard I'm sorry, there's 50,000 in each building. So you could have over 100,000 people in that area.
Oh, each building, 50,000. Before 9
o'clock made a big difference.
Do we have that right, Claudia? 50,000 per building?
Per building, and that small area, which sounds like a small area, but it's like a city within a city that these guys would have had as a first response unit. It's a city within a city and over 100,000 people. Had the attacks taken place after 9 a.m., it would have been considerably, more occupied, including the Windows of the World, which was the restaurant in the One Towers, which was completely destroyed. Nobody survived out there.
That's 500 people per floor, roughly. That seems really high.
Probably lower.
That's really high, isn't it? Wow. Well, guys, you're just amazing that you're willing to speak out to keep the message going on this 9-11 Rescue Workers and Friends.org that you guys and Claudia have put together. Claudia, your effort is just amazing, and we got to keep the strength for Claudia because she's the one that's the middle of the hub that's communicating the reality of life for the first responders on that event. And
well, I'm nothing without my brothers, and I love Jimmy and Terry so much. I can't put that into words, and they understand it because we share something, and they both share something very special. We all share something together as well. And I can't thank you and Jeff also for what you're doing for us and helping us to get this word out and reaching the very voices that so need to be heard. Hear us.
Well, your full morning session at 8:00 Central Time. I think it's about 53 minutes long. I've got that set up to where that's uninterrupted. I mean, when you sit down, guys, and you decide what words to take out of content, that's not easy to do. That is the hardest thing in the world to do is figure out what to, because originally we had it set up for half an hour, and now we got it to where we can get all the content in there, Claudia. So this is all good. So guys, appreciate everything you're doing for your fellow first responders, and glad you're all right. And I feel for those that didn't quite make it, and your stories are just incredible. Absolutely incredible. I can't imagine.
Well,
just cannot imagine.
I thank you guys for having us on. I really do, and I thank Claudia for all the efforts that she's undertaken over the years. And my main motivation is, it's self-interest, obviously, because the reality is that any given day, any of us can come down with something, and we could waste away just like Diane did. And that plays in the back of my head every stinking day since 9/11. I remember thinking in the Woolworth building, great, I survived 110 stories literally coming down on top of my head. What kind of horrible death am I going to die 5, 10, 20 years from now? So we're just a bunch of lab rats.
Huh. Sounds like he's got a little Bill Johnson.
A lot of us think that those that passed on 9/11 were actually the lucky ones in that regard. Because we're going through the slope.
Interesting.
And I just want to add, too, just one thing. I've been hearing your broadcast, and you have a lot of interesting topics, but I'm not going to get too deep into the thing that makes America great, and, than any other society, or most societies, I would say, is the social contract. We expect to be taken care of. That's the part. That's what makes, us do these that seem heroic things, because in the back of our mind, we know that if something happens to us, our family, or, if we get sick, and it seems like that social contract over time is being fractured, not only with 9/11 responders, but with veterans, and it's a very dangerous precedent, I think, that our country is heading on. And to me, there's no excuse that this bill, elapsed, that it actually ended in October, that they let this go by. I mean, I try to think back, what would our founding fathers think? And it's just, it's a very dangerous precedent, and I think every politician should take heed. And because once the social contract we give up our liberties, so that we have faith in these politicians, and once that starts to erode, it's a very dangerous, movement for our society ahead.
Well, guys, if there was one thing that we could do, time it right in a certain concentrated area of Claudia's show here, is how to get politicians to think beyond themselves. How in the world can we overcome that huge hill? How can we do that? What words do we need to say to get politicians to think beyond themselves? Because anytime a suggestion or a thought is brought up to them, they start thinking in their own mind, what kind of leverage do I have to get more than what they just asked for? Unfortunately, that's the reality. And
we're working it, and you're helping us to work it, and we thank you very much for that.
And you need them, but dang it, they need to do their job. You know,
Amen.
they need to do their job. One of my favorite people on the planet is Bill Snyder. He's a football coach for Kansas State University, and and then I have Dr. Dempsey on too, and he taught a class on poison praise. Okay, where you can praise people too much, and that falls in line with Bill Snyder, Coach Snyder. Is, he would always use the words about one of his players that didn't, really achieve some pretty high things. And he said, well, up until this point in time, they've done a good job, but we have this whole season to go yet. So we've got to keep things in check. And that's how, to me, we need to treat our politicians. Don't quit slamming yourself on the back so much and get back to work. What other things need to be done? What are the priorities? And who put themselves at risk where other people just wouldn't do it and they're not being cared for. And
the saying goes that humility comes before honor, and these guys need to be a little bit more humble, these politicians.
Amen.
And part of humility is to the very people that put you in your office in the first place. I don't think that Jimmy, Terry, or myself, I think we're all in unison on this one, we'd all rather just not have to talk about this ever again. Maybe with some friends, keep it quiet. We don't want to be talking about this. They're forcing us to do this. It's important, of course, for people to hear the historical stories, and I'm grateful for that also. But some of us just want to be humble, just, help our brotherhood, our family, our 9/11 family, and go on with our lives. But our lives have been cut short.
Yep.
And humility is part of our mission. But it needs to be on these politicians, too.
You bet. Well, Claudia, I could tell one of your guests dropped off, and I don't know who's left back on, but we love you, we care for you, and thanks for doing everything you have done. And Claudia, you're an amazing woman, and I'll have this up on the Covey sometime this evening.
Okay, thanks, everyone. God bless you, and happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Claudia.
Thank you again, Terry. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Terry. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, my gosh. Can you believe what those two guys have been through, Claudia's been through?
It was a war zone. These are casualties of war. And I think that when the history books are finally written accurately, it's going to reflect that a lot more than 3,000 people.
It's knocking on the door, 5,000 right now.
Yeah.